GM.
Super. So super excited to be hosting this panel session with amazing people out there, right? We'll start with quick introduction. Hi, I am Vanshika from Bioeconomy, and today we'll be hosting a panel on account abstraction. We'll be looking at different aspects. We've got Angser, we've got Sarang, and we've got Louis from Gelato. So yes, over to you. Let's go one by one for your introductions.
Now you can hear me. Hello everyone, I'm Ansgar. I'm a member of the Ethereum Foundation research team. I have been working on account abstraction in the past, specifically in 2020, when we co-authored an EIP that basically is the predecessor of the current EIP 437.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarang. I work at SushiSwap. It's one of the best dexes. And yeah, so I'm pretty excited about account abstraction because it makes a lot of things inside Sushi and other apps quite UX friendly. So yeah.
Hello, I'm Louis. I'm co-founder of Gelato Network, and we've been in the area of smart contract automation, relaying, and off-chain computation. Yeah, and also obviously interested in account abstraction, and I'm a 3078 maximalist. I'm very, very sad it was never adopted, but that's the...
It'll be a fun panel then.
Yeah.
Cool, all right. So let's begin, right? My very first question is for Ansgar, right? There have been EIPs that existed earlier on AA, like 862938, but 4337 is extremely popular and being adopted at a very rapid pace. So how does the history looks like and towards moving 4337, and how different it is from the older versions of AAs?
Yeah, it's a good question. So basically, I think the idea for account abstraction has been around for a long time. Basically, the beginnings of Ethereum, you can go back and look at Vitalik's writings from the early days, and the idea to basically give smart contracts the ability to pay for their own transactions was there from the very beginning. There was a very early IP, I think 60-something, right, that already proposed like a first somewhat naive kind of way of doing it. It basically lay dormant just because it wasn't a priority until early 2020. Then Vitalik kind of had another write-up of where the state of the research was, and then we, back then I wasn't at the Ethereum Foundation, but over at Consensus, we as a research team, we went ahead and spent the summer of 2020 basically iterating on those ideas and bringing it in the form of an EIP that was 2938. And basically, the only difference to this new EIP that is out there is that we wanted to basically natively enshrine account abstraction on Ethereum. So that would have required a hard fork to basically change the protocol. Other than that, basically, after we finished, it became obvious that just on the protocol level, we were busy with other things, so there was no time to do this for now. And so Vitalik basically got a new team together, including Yoav and Christoph, who I think talked about this last year here at ETH Dubai. And they basically just took this EIP that we created back then and basically ripped out the protocol parts and turned it into an ERC. So ERCs are standards for things that don't need a hard fork. But other than that, the ideas, of course, they added a lot of features. Now there are paymasters. It's now much more of like a full-featured EIP, but basically the core idea is basically kind of coming out of that tradition. But that's why now it's gaining traction, because now it's finally in a form where it can just basically, it's ready to go right now. We don't have to wait for anything anymore.
No, that does make sense, right? Like, we do not want to change the actual protocol layer and then want to create something on top of it, like a counterfactual thing. So yes. So second question for you, Sarang, right? What are the current challenges in implementing account abstraction within the dApps?
I mean, like at the application level, like there's still certain things that we can't fix, or we have to kind of like rewrite for like account abstraction to be used of them. Like to start with, like a lot of applications which uses like signature based like methods to verify the ownership. You can't use account abstraction unless the EIP passes in, which lets contract sign something. But unless that happens, we can't use it. There are like a lot of prominent dApps have like checks based upon tx.origin, which also can't get it. They have, for the reason that they don't want contracts to kind of interact with each other. And then there are these various NFT mints and drop, which basically use methods to like stop like mass minting, that they don't allow contracts to kind of do it. Though they use like very bad prevention, they just check the contact storage, but those kind of applications are still broken by kind of a current implementation, let's say 4337, right? So, and that kind of the people that this kind of also targets, right? Like those people who are into this NFT space who are kind of mass minting it, but sometimes it's not going to work for them, right? So there has to be like a shift on how people going to develop application, where they have to where they have to make sure that the contracts kind of support both the paradigm from now on, and also don't couple that together with the message or sender. Instead, use different methods to kind of like transfer the position, or have like maybe like something like deposit for, where you can kind of use account abstraction and also maybe like store it in a different storage state or something like that.
Right. Although I think kind of one interesting aspect of that sets 437 apart from earlier versions of kind of out of protocol account abstraction is that it does not need like special account abstraction like opt-in by every dApp, right? Like the only thing, and you're talking about this, the only thing you basically have to make sure is that your protocol supports smart contract wallets in general. I mean, but smart contract wallets already exist today. So if your protocol is not compatible with Nose-Safe, for example, right, because it doesn't support smart contract signatures, these kind of things, then of course you will also not be compatible with account abstraction, because again, account abstraction just allows smart contract wallets to directly initiate transactions. But as long like all the previous versions of relayer networks always basically require manual opt-in by dApps, and now basically we are removing this restriction. And from the point of the dApp, as long as you're compatible with smart contract wallets, you will be compatible with account abstraction.
Yeah, and that's like a very good thing with what introduces is 4337. So this is on the changes of the dApp developer side instead, like that these smart contract coders have to be smart enough to actually like make use of 4337 properly, because if they keep disallowing contracts to be used like to be like a callable function in their own contracts, we cannot kind of get the true power of AA out.
So the next question is for you, Luis. Gelato is an automated smart contract execution. Now, what difference does it make, when you include the account abstraction part in that? And what have been your learnings, while implementing this thing?
I'm sorry, the acoustics are really bad here because the speakers are facing that way. I'm trying to understand all of the question, but I would be lying if I said that I understood all. But it's about account abstraction and automation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so Gelato is a smart contract automation protocol, but we also have relaying components and so on that are super useful to be combined with smart contract wallets. But for smart contract automation specifically, actually interestingly in Gelato we built a smart contract wallet into the protocol. That was in 2020 or so, because we really wanted every user to be a smart contract wallet, because then everything becomes programmable, and programmability is the holy grail for automation, right? Like you can now have your assets custodied in a self-custodial wallet, and you can define arbitrary conditions, transaction flows, asset management, all these things, and have them be executed for you by a decentralized network at the right time. Your bank account, like your on-chain bank account, now becomes an automated trading tool, an automated asset manager. So it's super cool stuff. Back then, we worked together with InstantApp, and many people don't know this, but InstantApp was also a smart contract wallet always. They're known for their DeFi strategies, but really when you use InstantApp, you have to deploy a smart contract wallet. They call it the DSA. And 2 years ago, we worked with them on basically account abstraction for smart contract wallets. And they had this tool where you would automatically like move your funds between Aave and Compound and so on to optimize yield. That was before Jörn was there. So yeah, it's super useful. In general, for me, smart contract or account abstraction is nowadays currently it's defined as a smart contract wallet in combination with a relay network, and ERC-4337 is just a way of opening up the market for relayers. So So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. In general, I'm pro decentralization, so whatever works will work, and as long as more people use smart contract wallets, I'm happy.
So the question that I would have there is, I think the way we think about 437, or at least one aspect of it, is that it allows a more clean separation of layers. Like you were talking about that you integrated smart contract wallets into Gelato in the 2020. But that needed like a custom support. You had to actually think about what does it mean. You had to manually implement support. And in the future, the hope would be that with like 437 or future versions of that, basically you no longer need special support for smart contract wallet. It all basically, as long as basically you can focus on your layer, right, the automation layer and the relaying layer, and then basically just have everything else just basically natively work out of the box. Is that like, does that fit how you think about this, or like?
Totally. I think I maybe misspoke a bit. Like we had a smart contract wallet that we thought was cool that back then, but really the protocol was always open. It just called any contract, whether that is a smart contract wallet or not. So it was just like for us, this wallet automation was a cool thing. But nowadays, to be honest, we work with like the Nose Safe team or InstantApp, and yeah, we don't really think about building smart contract wallets ourselves anymore.
Makes sense.
It also kind of solves one more issue, right? Like most of the teams were rebuilding the same stuff, right? So we had something at Sushi that we needed kind of relaying system to do that, and if 4337 existed that time, we wouldn't have been building that, right? We were just passing on to those those open networks, and they could be doing that. But instead, we had to make sure that that runs properly. There is no DOS attack. There is, it doesn't go down and stuff like that. So yeah, that also kind of solves by 4337.
Great. So I think this is a question that a lot of people might be having, that products like Urgent, GSN, they have been around for like a very long time. But with the account abstraction thing coming into the picture since last year, there has been like a hype about it. And why is this happening right now?
Right. So I would say, basically, my perspective, and it fits really well with what we said just now, is basically that so far you basically always had to have, and the reason is a little technical, but you always basically had to have special support for whatever relay system you used. And the reason, I mean, maybe I can go into this just briefly, but for anyone who's like a little bit interested in the technical side of things, but basically, if you have normal accounts on Ethereum, we call them EOAs, right? Just normal ECDSA signature kind of based accounts. Transactions that these accounts send, they are like, have very simple static validity conditions, right? So basically you verify the signature once, but then you can keep it locally in your node until it's included on chain, because you understand under which, like, it will always remain valid unless someone sends a competing transaction, right? If you basically, for example, you want to pay more gas and so you send a competing transaction, sometimes you might know this from Etherscan or so if you send replacement transactions. But it's very simple in your transaction pool to have logic for that. With smart contract wallets now, if they're able to have arbitrary validity conditions, basically a transaction could be valid 1 second and invalid the next second, and then valid again and invalid again, and you have no idea, do I keep it in my mempool, do I throw it out? You might be able to spam the network and then it can't be included after all, so you don't have to pay for it. So basically, so far in the past, the way people always dealt with this is by just having special logic and trusted relayer systems, and now for the first time, basically, we have a standard where it restricts the type of validity checks you're allowed to do pre-payment to like a safe subset of functionality. And so for the first time ever, we now have trustless transaction pools for these account abstraction transactions. And this is like, I mean, it sounds again like a niche technical thing, but it is a huge deal, because once we have a trustless open transaction pool, now we don't need special relayer systems with special opt-in for every dApp. Now we can have an open system and and so at least my perspective here would be, I mean, maybe also, of course, with hype, it's always sometimes it's also this narrative. Now it's maybe it has been brewing for a long time. People have talked about how EOAs are not great, and how it would be amazing, as you were saying, right? Like how smart contract wallets have all this amazing functionality potentially. So maybe it's partially also narrative, but I think the underlying technical improvements really are very meaningful. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, I completely agree. But like with Argent and like gas station network, as you told, like things were very rigid, right? So it was the first good step, but we needed a way for this to kind of, have into a validity layer where you could, just provide custom logic and you could like, maybe like, let's say if I wanted to schedule a transaction, right? I can't do it with Argent, but with 4337 and like compliant validity instructions, I could easily do that. But I do feel like even though there is an open market for it, which is pretty good, there still would exist secondary and private markets for it, because for dApps, there's still value acquired from the user flow that they get. And like, let's say for sushi, like I would probably want them to come through our private RVC first, and maybe if we can extract some value on top of it. And if we can't, it would go through the open permissionless mempool, just like how you do it with the Flashbots currently.
A question that I would have there is like for Gelato, basically, in a way, would you think about like some of the automation functionality that you provide also as like almost a type of specialized like mempool, where basically because you have an understanding of when am I supposed to bring this transaction to the chain, right? Which is functionality that, of course, the public pools can't provide. So isn't in a way maybe Gelato like a very advanced form of like a special purpose transaction pool?
Absolutely, that's the way we have been thinking about it internally, at least for years now. Actually, and I think like with 4337, for example, one of the reasons I was interested in your earlier EIP that tried to enshrine it at the protocol level is, I mean, first of all, it doesn't make the presumption that everybody deploys a smart contract wallet. I think it was about upgrading EOAs to also become sort of smart contract wallet, sort of, I don't want to misquote you, but something along these lines. That's one cool thing about it, but the other thing is with 4337, for example, it's a lot of code that you basically ask people to put on their nodes. There's DOS vectors, sure there's code around this, but what I'm wondering is where do we make the cut, right? At what point do we say, let's ossify, the client should not have more code, let's not add more, there's already like flashboards, now ERC 4337, and like the code base is growing, like this thing should be stable, ossified. At what point do we say, let's have the networks built on top of Ethereum take care of this? Now, of course, the cool thing about ERC 4337 is it is a open market proposal, and that's great, and in general, if it really works and succeeds, then I'm for it. But there's other like good solutions out there, like Gelato Network being one of them, to achieve similar properties for users. The market is more closed, but we're also working on opening it up over time. We're already adding node operators. There's like we're not the only ones running these nodes, and hopefully in 2 years it can be completely open and permissionless. Maybe it will never reach the same sort of distribution scale as an ERC 4337 would, but maybe good enough for something, a service like this. And here I think the discussion like has to be had, okay, where do we stop? Because, you know, you could also build a 0x relayer order book into a client and have an open DEX in the client, but, you know, yeah, I think that's my one thing where I'm not too sure. Like looking at the ERC, there's a lot of code in there, a lot of stuff that, I don't know, I didn't at least 2 years ago envision this to be on the Ethereum client.
Great. So we're coming close to the time, but I've got the last question for you all. That you know, what is the future of account abstraction looking in your opinion, and what do you think how L1 and L2 would be adopting it in the coming days?
Sorry, I really struggle to understand the acoustics are so. Yeah, so the question basically like the future of account abstraction. Where do we see it going, and does it like is there a distinction between layer 1 and layer 2? Basically. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, there's a big distinction. For example, I think Starknet is this typical example where they already enshrined it at the protocol level, and it sounds super cool. Although I haven't tried it out, to be honest. And a future of account abstraction, like for me, like Gelato, we're like back-end focused, but we also experiment. Like when we see cool new stuff, we also try it out. Like we also tried out this account abstracted wallet, gasless wallet, we call it. And pretty soon it was pretty obvious that the problem is really around interfaces and around interoperability between interfaces, so wallet connect, all these things. Because it's actually pretty hard, like once you onboard a user onto their account abstraction wallet, the funds are sort of stuck there, none of the UI support looking into it, so there has to be so much standardization around that.
like all the UIs, OpenSea and so on, all the wallets have to come together and work on standards here like they did for EOAs. And that's like, I think, as long as this isn't solved, which it's currently is far from being solved, the future, you know, is questionable, but I'm sure that it will be solved. And once UIs natively support smart contract wallets in a much better way than they do today, then hopefully there will be a day where not a single account will just be an EOA, everybody will be a smart contract. Makes sense, yeah.
I mean, like, current UI is completely horrible. Like, even after having smart contract wallets from like 2018, we still have to do manual transactions, like 8 transactions, right? So we still have like a long way, and I completely agree on that. And not just like Starknet, like ZK Sync, and not even like EVM blockchains, but like outside the ecosystem, if you look at Sway and Fuel, they have been like going for like, you know, like native account abstraction. And I feel like, not as a joke, but I feel like the future of account abstraction is getting enshrined into the protocol. But I think you would be the best one to answer when would that happen.
Right, and it's a good point because like Lewis also was saying, right, just a second ago about the question, where do we draw the line of like adding complexity versus at some point basically leaving it up to layers on top. And yeah, I would say again, 437 is also, to start with, basically it is a separate kind of layer, but I think there is a desire to maybe over time talk about enshrining it like in the core and like some layer 2s. That in that way, basically the difference between layer 1 and layer 2 is that I think layer 2s are more at liberty to experiment with these things. So I would expect more experimentation around enshrining, like making it native in layer 2s, and also just in terms of adoption, because for now at least there's still some cost overhead. You know, you have to have your own smart contract wallet. So I assume that like we'll see more and quicker adoption on layer 2s and experimentation. But in terms of kind of like the future, I do think that, I mean, as we were saying, like it's all about standards and standardization, and I think kind of 437 can really act as like a kind of a crystallization point for just getting people on board with the shared standard. And then in the long run, we can talk about enshrining it or not and what the trade-offs are.
Thank you. Thank you for the amazing panel. And can we please have a round of applause for all our speakers here? All right. Thanks, everyone. Please have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right. One more round of applause for our panel, please. Come on, put your hands together. Yeah, do we have any questions for any of the panel members? If you do, raise your hand, or they can come off the stage and answer questions. All right, so catch these guys as they come off the stage. Ask them any questions you have. Yeah? Oh, sorry. Here. I didn't see you over there, buddy.
Hey. Thank you for this panel. So I have a question. Do you have any list of security considerations of using account abstractions? Because I know that there's several differences between the EOA, like the TX origin, like the nonce resetting, so nonce can be resetted for the smart contract account. So there's maybe other differences. So yeah, so for the app builders and for integrators who are going to integrate with account abstractions, and for auditors, there's differences between the EUA accounts. So where is the list, or do you have some list for this kind of differences?
Right, it's a good question. So the question, like, basically, what are the security considerations? And I would really stress that basically the specific way EIP 4337 is structured is that it does not in any way require like new special support. So from a dev perspective, but also of course from a like security and auditor perspective, I would really think about it as supporting account abstraction now is equivalent to supporting smart contract wallets. So all the existing security considerations, like for example, some dApps explicitly ban smart contract wallets by using like these tx.origin checks. If you do this, they will continue to work, at least for now. This ERP will not change this. It just means that over time, as this ERP leads to more and more smart contract wallet adoption, your dApp will just no longer be able to support any of these users, right? So if you are today compatible and secure in interaction with smart contract wallets, this situation will be identical. So there's no additional security considerations entering the picture.
So what about non-source settings? So if owner creates the account abstraction contract, the simple account, and then distracted, so nonce will be reset to 0, and everyone can replay the old transactions.
So the thing is, there's this, like, because these user operations are just like an abstract concept, it is basically the job of the smart contract wallet to keep track of this, right? So there's, from the outside, basically, there's no change. Like the only change now is that basically the smart contract wallet has to make sure that transactions can't be replayed and whatnot.
Okay,
But, yeah.
Thank you, got it, thank you.
I would say there's also one thing we noticed, and part of the reason there sometimes is this requirement in protocols that the sender is an EOA is you know, there's programmability, so flash loans could become an attack vector for some wallets. So you have to be a bit careful, I would say. There's a change, but like you said, it's basically the same that already exists with smart contract wallets. Yeah.
Any more questions? Going once? All right. If you have any more questions, you can come and see them when they come off stage. Now we'll give them a round of applause. Sorry to make you do that 3 times.
Yay.